If everything was stripped away from me and I had no other support that I could see or appreciate, I would still paint. I would still be doing that.
Jacob Lawrence's work celebrates the human quality in man. It celebrates the things that we can do to better our condition. And it celebrates our heroes.
Jacob Lawrence really with that splash, the dash, the right angle, you know, that really says something. The pictures of the juke house experiences, the blues cycles, his whole aesthetic about how he sees us as a people is glorious.
And what he tells a person in coming in off the street is that your life is important, and it's important to remember something about where we've come from, and this is capturing a part of history.
He focuses on liberation and does it in the way that a person would do it on a daily basis, in small increments, as an individual, putting his commitment down on paper.
I don't think he's so much concerned about art as he is about life. There aren't many around like Jacob Lawrence.
Some have said my art is social commentary or it's protest. It couldn't be anything else if I grew up in the Harlem community and that was the source of my content, if you want to interpret it that way.
Jacob Lawrence has been painting for over 5 decades and has become one of America's foremost artists. His style has defied convention and fashion and remains unique. He is Professor Emeritus at the University of Washington in Seattle, where he and his wife, artist Gwendolyn Knight, have lived since 1971. Lawrence began painting in New York's Harlem community as a teenager during the 1930s. Federally funded arts workshops helped sustain Harlem's long-established artistic vitality during the Depression. For the Lawrences, the workshops were stimulating.
This had a certain kind of magic to it that I was able to put something on paper, be able to put something on a two-dimensional picture plane that had some meaning. I couldn't put this into words because I was only 14, 15 years of age. But I think that was it, and that intrigued me, you know, putting black next to red. I could make decisions. Do I want to use this color or that color? And this was very, people like myself very rarely had the opportunity of making decisions, you see, so you could make decisions. So you were in a certain kind of control here, and it was a very constructive kind of a thing.
I think Jake just recorded what was there, and his early paintings are of the Harlem scene, what was there. Some of it was not pleasant. I guess a great deal of it was not pleasant because we didn't live in a society that was very pleasant, and he happened to be such a good artist that it was very moving, very touching, and very real.
Young artists, including Jacob Lawrence and Gwendolyn Knight, met many influential figures at the arts workshops, where they also found mentors, such as sculptor Augusta Savage and painter Charles Alston, who headed 2 of these studios. Alston's 306 Center became a major hub in the Harlem cultural community. There, Lawrence met the poets Countee Cullen, Langston Hughes, and Claude McKay.
I started going there after school at the expense of my own school work. I was anxious to get there. I would deliver my newspapers. I had a laundry job. I would pick up laundry and deliver laundry. And then I'd just head toward the center. And then I came in contact with many other people who were probably thinking the same way I was thinking or having the same kind of experience. And we came in contact with older people. And when I say older, you know, when you're 15, a person 25, it's you know, they're ready to leave the world. That's what you think of it. So we all had this kind of a wonderful experience, and it's only in retrospect that you realize how much this meant to our lives and to our development. And I think Harlem generally was a community of hope.
Will it still be America the second time around?
Keith Mason heads the Hittite Empire, a Los Angeles-based experimental theater collective.
When I was younger, I took a work-study job at the St. Louis Art Museum, and at that time they were doing an exhibition of Jacob Lawrence. And I remember one special occasion when I was working in the education department and watching them hang the work in the gallery. He was there. And in passing, he brought me aside, he took me aside, and he just talked to me. And it was like this major artist talking to me, right? And that just inspired me that there was a black man doing art, you know, in a major museum. And the way he painted African Americans or black people at that time was like really inspirational. It was on an angle. It was sharp, focused colors that I really felt like was vibrant and full with life and energy. And he talked about knowing our history through these colors and doing the cycles of rage and pain and anger and blues. And he talked filled with so much life and so much caring and so much joy that it made me have an overwhelming sense of like, yeah, we have created art throughout the history and throughout times, and I wanted to do that.
During the 1920s, New York's Harlem community had emerged as the cultural capital of the African American population. When young Jacob Lawrence settled in Harlem in 1930, the community was still vibrant with the presence of such dynamic figures as the African nationalist Marcus Garvey, the educator and journalist W.E.B. Du Bois, the cultural historian Elaine Locke, and others who urged black Americans to discover and celebrate their cultural heritage.
So I would walk along the streets and I would hear the Garveyites talk about the Back to African movement. I'd hear the church people talk about the importance of some sort of religious affiliation. I would hear the communists talk about how important it was what was going on in the communist countries. I'd hear the street corner orators speak about revolution, speak about Toussaint Louverture, the black liberator of Haiti, and very fiery speakers.
Another focal point of the Harlem community was the Schomburg Collection, a division of the New York Public Library and a unique resource for the study of black culture worldwide.
Arthur Schomburg set up the Schomburg Center when his teacher told him that he had no history, he had no culture, because he was a black Puerto Rican.
And he collected books and materials pertaining to and about black people throughout the world. And it was a wonderful source of information, a wonderful source to do. And I went there and I read, I took notes, and from out of that, developed the series.
As Lawrence learned about black history, it seemed only natural to him that his art reflect his new awareness. In 1937, at age 20, he celebrated the life of Toussaint Louverture, the black slave whose revolt against French rule led to the liberation of Haiti, in a narrative series that combines images and text. Lawrence went on to paint many more series, including Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, and John Brown.
I think the sources of my content in selecting Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass and Toussaint Louverture was more of a self-expression and maybe seeing myself in these roles. My parents were separated, so the last I saw my father until years later, I must have been about 5 or 6 years of age. So therefore I didn't have what we call a complete family unit. So maybe this was a motivating factor in having this kind of relating to this kind of heroes or heroines or maybe it was myself I was putting down on paper. So I can only think in those terms now. But maybe that's what it was. Maybe. Again, I think of what else would I be doing? Would my life have been a destructive one had I not had this outlet?
And I know for a fact that art saves lives. I know for a fact across the board. It may not be a direct cause and effect relationship, but I have members inside of our collective. Art has changed their lives. It has changed how they live in the world and how they create to live in this world. So of course I agree with him wholeheartedly. If we spent a lot of time with young men in between the ages of 15 and 22 and just let them express their stories, gave them the opportunity to paint their stories, gave them the chance to dance their stories, I think we would have a better society. I really believe that.
This is a photograph of our presentation to President Carter
and
Mrs. Carter. I went to the inauguration, took notes, returned to my studio here, and out of that I did this silk screen print. People were up in the trees, and it was quite a festive occasion.
There's a very beautiful, very eloquent message of democracy in such an image. And it doesn't need the epic pageantry that another artist might have decided to go with. And it's very interesting that some years later he was invited again by the Carter administration to create a work of art or participate in a group situation that had to deal with the art of protest. And I think it's very revealing about Jacob Lawrence that he respectfully declined to participate in this conference.
I think the word protest involves anger. And I don't think Jake is an angry man.
This is a photograph of my teaching at Brandeis University. I enjoyed teaching. I found it very stimulating and rewarding. I have gotten so much out of it. I've been retired now since 1983, but I do miss the students, and having worked with them was so many years.
This work at the Seattle Art Museum is by Barbara Thomas, who studied with Lawrence.
To have someone in the classroom kind of guiding you without dominating you, that's a gift. You know, that really is a gift. Showing you how to see something without turning you into him, which is really a quite impressive trait for someone who, when you look at his work, is very strong.
From the beginning of his career, Jacob Lawrence has pointed out the harsh realities of racial oppression, resisting both fantasy and pessimism, looking instead to concrete examples of goodness and uplift in our society. In the 1960s, he revisited the Harriet Tubman theme for a children's book.
A group objected to some of the forms as being ugly. And I received this letter from this one, I think she must have been a school teacher or a librarian, and said, "How could you do this to Harriet Tubman?" And it's Harriet Tubman scrubbing floors. And I wrote back and told her in so many words that she must remember that Harriet Tubman was not going on a Sunday school picnic when she was with these fugitives moving up into Canada. So she would not have manicured nails and things of that sort. People accept certain things as being ugly and certain things as being beautiful. And of course they opt for what they call, in quote, the beautiful, and that's in conventional terms, anything that's not that is ugly. And I can't think of anything as being ugly. Ugly, I think, is a character. It's a character thing and not a physical thing, you see.
Now Jake, I think, puts all of his political thinking into his work. whether he sits down and says, he doesn't sit down and say, I'm going to make a political statement, but certainly all of his works are political statements.
If we examine figures throughout history of any period, of any country, there's this element of struggle that goes on which adds further quality and dimension to a life. I don't think a struggle has to be overly dramatic. It can be a creative kind of a thing. It can be a search. It doesn't have to be anything that's over. It can be very quiet. It's just beautiful that we have this capacity to do this. And I always think about Claude McKay and his poem, If We Must Die. I think I remember that poem, if we must die, let it not be like hogs, hunted and penned in some inglorious spot, while round us bark the mad and hungry dogs, making their mock of our accursed lot. If we must die, oh, let us nobly die, so that our precious blood shall not be shed in vain. Then even the monsters we defy shall be constrained to honor us so dead.
Jacob Lawrence has pursued his own path in art, depicting the intimate and personal, and reflecting idealism as well as tragedy. The Hiroshima series from 1983 is a subtle and horrific view of a human apocalypse. The Genesis series explores community, faith, and tradition. Lawrence has developed his builder's theme for well over 20 years. Tools, construction, cooperation. In his art and life, Jacob Lawrence continues to honor basic human virtue.
He won't claim credit for galvanizing masses of people, and yet he does recognize that many, many people see in the example of his work, in the work itself and in the example of his work, a kind of role model, a mentor.
One of the things that Jacob has shown me and has shown many artists prior to me and has made that path is that you believe in the smallest thing. I think the lesson for the life and the lesson for the culture is that you need to believe in those small things in order to make anything big happen.
This is his voice. This is the way he speaks. And he treats people in a gentle, kind manner, but when he wants to express an idea about situations that he's vitally concerned about, then he does it through this voice of the visual presentation.
Lawrence's universality as a communicator, as well as his heritage, led to his being invited to Africa in 1962 by the African group Imbari and the American Society for African Culture as part of a cultural exchange.
I never thought of myself as a cultural ambassador, or this is what I mean when I say that I was not on the outside looking in, but on the inside. And I was painting that inside. So I didn't think about why I was painting a certain way, what I was trying to say. It's only in later years, and that's because others have told me what I was trying to say.
Jake, don't downplay yourself like that.
No, that's true. I didn't think of these.
No, I mean really, you might have not thought of yourself as an ambassador, but I think you were pleased that, for instance, Mbari and the society would ask you to show your paintings to people who were your ancestors in many ways, you know. So.
Yeah, well, that's true, yeah. That's true, I agree. You see, it overlaps so that I can't, it's hard to say what do I hope my work to achieve outside of myself. Well, I use tools, for instance. I think tools are very beautiful. Maybe this is teaching too, how beautiful the tool is, how it's a symbol of uplift, a symbol of building, a symbol of achievement. And maybe, as I talk, maybe it's closer to a philosophy. But instead of using words or instead of using other kinds of symbols, I use paint. I think the value of being involved in the arts in general, that it adds to a quality of life that anyone on any level can appreciate. And it opens up an entire dimension that I dread to think if we didn't have this experience, what would happen? What would we not have? I just want to continue working and continue making discoveries, continue probing, and continue adding further dimension to what I'm doing. I'm always looking for something.